Okay, I think we are live, and we got a question during our last stream here that we wanted to address as its own video. So it's somebody going through an experience having both physical and other, what you would call awakening symptoms, really. So, hi GP, I started my practice 2 years ago, and 6 months in, I had a big shift in my reality. The filter was temporarily gone. In that time, I experienced what can be described as a Kundalini awakening. It was very frightening to me because I did not know what that meant at the time. My dreams got extremely vivid, and I had a lot of crushing and thumping pressure between my eyebrows. This sensation made me very anxious. My thoughts and sense of self came gradually back. After that, I entered what could be called a dark night of the soul with a long list of health issues. I got homesick for 1 year. 2 years after, I have found my center back, and my sense of being that which cannot be described is now back and stronger than ever. Long story short, what does this third eye pressure mean? I have been checked by my doctor and I've had an MRI scan, but everything looks normal. I don't think about the pressure I have to this day, but I want your opinion on it. This sensation is paired with the body feeling drained despite my ability to do more than before. Sorry for the long text. No, don't need to be sorry. Thank you, GP. You've helped me go through the dark night. Love from Norway.
Mm. Hello, Norway. Ooh. Well, it is possible, mercifully, it's not likely, that the awakening can happen when our nervous system isn't really quite ready for it. One of the reasons I created, well, the main reason I created inner reconciliation as a process, and the yoga of allowing, which is a way of stabilizing the whole nervous system to make it ready for the influx of energy which we experience as the awakening. I've heard many times about people going through the Kundalini training, having the looking for that Kundalini experience of the energy rising through the chakras up the spine. But without the proper spiritual development of character that makes one flexible and pliable. What you're feeling in that pressure in your forehead is simply the resistant patterns that remain within the nervous system that are still in place. There's still remnants of the old sense of identity. I prefer to try to stabilize and clear those out first, but I don't really have control over when somebody has those moments where that sense of self disappears, and the sense that when the filters come down and you see yourself as you actually are. But be rest assured, there's nothing in the awakening itself, there's nothing in the truth of being that is threatening or overwhelming or stress causing or difficult. All of that is the resistance within the energy system, within the nervous system, and particularly within the sense of identity, which does not want to let go of its position as a person. It's very stuck in being somebody, and the awakening experience is actually being nobody, or rather, nobody in particular. You're not stuck in any particular sense of identity. That's what the awakening is. And so the very same practice that I would use in inner reconciliation for bringing somebody to the point where the nervous system is open and flexible for the awakening to happen is what I do after the awakening actually happens. Now, this is a big misunderstanding in spiritual circles, that somehow the awakening is it, right? The heavens have parted, God has spoken, and it's over now. Good. Yay. I'm done. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's really just the beginning. And little by little, the increasing depth of insight and perception that is free of the filters of identification as yourself as a limited, separate person begins to permeate more thoroughly into the entire human system, into the body, into the cells. and dissolves all of the remnants of the energetic patterns which were embodying the self-image that isn't really you. And this may feel, well, it can feel like a struggle until you understand what it is. At which point you can stop fighting it. You just let it run its course, and it will stabilize very, very quickly. I mean, you've got truth on your side. You are the self. The vision that you have of who you really are is the truth. And it will eventually just kind of displace everything unlike itself and bring calm and peace to all the earth. um, there's a very interesting thing in the Book of Revelation in the Bible, one of the most misunderstood of all the books of the Bible. There's the story of the war in heaven, where Satan is thrown out of heaven, and the like. It is a symbolic thing. It's not a real event that took place. I know that many Christians will not be happy that I said that, but it represents exactly what you're experiencing here, because it's very interesting the way it said it. The Satan, the adversary. That's literally what it means, and it represents basically that which opposes the truth, and that is simply the egoic sense, the false sense of identity. Eventually, in the awakening, it's seen through, and you could say symbolically that it has been thrown out of heaven. It has been banished. But interestingly enough, it says it is banished to the earth, where Satan wandered to and fro across the earth because he knew he had but a short time. That's a very beautiful line, right? As the awakening occurs, the days are numbered of the false sense of who you are. But it's still active in the nervous system as responses and reactions and the like. And it will be resistant to the new way of being that is dawning on you. Don't pay it any attention whatsoever. Recognize it for what it is, and just take your hands off of it, and just let the insight that you didn't create in the first place, right? I mean, you didn't make up this insight. It came to you. It will come to the rest of you. It just came to your conscious awareness first. It will eventually move into your feelings and finally into your behavior. And you will, that's what is meant by heaven coming down to earth. You'll be living this truth and not just thinking it and not just feeling it. It'll actually be acting itself out in your life. So I hope that explains it for you. Wherever you run into any kind of tension or stress or any kind of buildup like that, take a nice deep breath, relax, and let it happen. When you let go of the struggle with it, you have let go of the fight. There's no more conflict, and the energy will have to dissipate because there's nothing for it to resist against. Because it is the energy of resistance. But if you're not pushing on it, there's nothing for it to resist. It takes two to resist, right? If something's pushing and resist, if you take your hand away, it's going to move a little bit, and then, it's just going to drop off because it's activated by resistance. So I hope that, friend in Norway, I hope that answers your question, and I hope that brings you some comfort, and just be patient. This whole thing is working itself out, and to the experience you've had is really quite blessed, and believe it or not, is rare in the human kingdom. Very, very few get to see what you've seen. So just really kind of take that in and enjoy the ride.
And they may be here, so if you are here, feel free to follow up with that for sure. Give it another minute. And while we do that, or if anybody else has any other questions on the subject, just let us know. While we're waiting for that, I guess we could also say that resistance isn't always necessarily so forceful and obvious.
Yeah.
Your desire to understand what a particular sensation is in the mind's like what does this mean and why is it happening here, is also a sort of form of resistance that isn't necessarily as obvious,
Yeah.
but it does keep things a little bit constricted. Even that sense of wanting to know why is this happening, even wanting to call it, oh, well, this is a Kundalini, like, well, I mean, that gives it a word and a context, but really it's really beyond words, right? I mean, that really can't quite capture it. So that the relaxing that tendency to want to put labels and categories and descriptions on the experience can actually help relax the whole thing too. You'll find that's a way of sort of sustaining that pattern that wants to objectify it and make it solid and make it into something that it needs to work
And
with.
that's a big realization when you realize you actually don't have to figure out anything about it or its origin in order for it to dissipate. that's that's like such a huge burden. So many people, if I could just understand it and figure it out, then I just drop all of that and just be with the feeling and watch what happens. It's you'll be amazed at how easy this whole process really becomes.
Accepting, letting things be, not the way you think they are, but letting them be in such a way that your mind doesn't interfere with it. Exactly. Yeah, that's what Popcorn Mask wrote. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to describe it, really. Um, because letting things be, as you said, not what you think they are. Even when we get, even like a good answer, I mean, even if you listen to what GP said, there can be a tendency to now kind of be framing everything that happens like, okay, well, GP or whoever, whatever I've read, whatever
Right.
teacher said, this is what's happening now. And it can kind of color it a little bit. It's like, okay, well, I know what this is, right? You really don't need to, you kind of can't know what it is on that level. Like, you can only know what it is after you let it be, if that makes sense.
Right.
It's kind of like tasting a food. You don't really know it. You can Someone could tell you this is a chicken and this came from there and that it's made with these spices, but you don't really know it until it's in your mouth. And the more questions you're asking about it,
It'll get
the more
cold.
you're not really tasting it.
Yeah.
So it's one way to look at it. I've got some other questions coming in. Resistance sucks so much energy out of everyday life. Yeah, it doesn't. It's a very subtle thing too. Remember,
Yeah.
it's not always felt. We often don't notice it until it's like really smacking us in the face. But these sort of subtle things are resistance, and um, a good reminder for me and everyone who's been doing this or part of any type of spiritual practice for a while is never underestimate the real basics. Like, even when you've had a bunch of crazy experiences and maybe now you have a bunch of understanding and you can give terms to things, and you might sort of create an idea that like you're more advanced, and you may be, but the really the most simple practices, which is just kind of still meditation, just letting the feelings come, they apply just as they're often the very best technique, no matter where you are on the cycle, right? So you can often find that just returning to very simple body awareness type exercises,
Yes.
like the first exercise on the inner reconciliation site, just like the free intro, right? Maybe you've gone through a bunch of training with teachers and retreats, and you have a very like developed system and very sophisticated way of dealing with things and understanding them, and dealing with a lot of energy. But just that simple like breathing, being with the feelings, um, always take some time to return to that, because I never stop being amazed. Like, oh wow, this if you learn nothing but this, you're kind of okay, because
Yeah.
whether it's the most intense, I'm seeing things in other dimensions type experiences seem to be going on, and I'm losing my sense of reality, to just my arm hurts, right? It's this sort of welcoming the experience and noticing the tendency to label and describe and grasp and fix and change and letting that go on.
It always comes down to just simple presence, and the simpler the better. And everything else is secondary. I mean, the mind's a useful tool. It's very descriptive. We're using it right now to have this conversation and get questions and answer the questions. Um, but underlying the entire thing is simply this experience of presence. This presence awareness. And it needs no explanation. And that is where all the stillness is. And everything can grow out of that. So just going back to a simple body awareness of dropping the resistance and just being with whatever happens to be there and just feeling the feel of what it means to be is just so powerful. I do it all the time. And then words will come because the words need to come. But they need to come when they need to come. and I don't need them to understand. You don't need words to understand. Just the presence and the feeling itself is the understanding. That's all you really need.
Somebody said, I'm not sure how I got here, meaning like stumbled onto this video, but I love it. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. It's the magic of
Sometimes
the
we're not
internet.
quite sure how we got here either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Um, so I think that covers. The person who asked the question hasn't responded yet, but hopefully they'll see the video, and if they have any follow-ups, they could put that on a comment. You have time for a different question that came in?
Sure.
Or? Okay, cool.
Sure.
Somebody said, what would you say of desires that have been around for many years but have never materialized?
I love that because I'm planning a couple of courses on that. Actually, this week, Wednesday, I'm doing a deep dive course on called How to Manifest Anything. It's all about manifesting, and keying to manifestation is understanding the nature of desire. If it's a real desire, right, and not just something your ego wants to flatter itself, but if it is a desire that's really arising out of your true nature, like a desire to play music or be creative, or a desire for a family, or the stuff that's very innate and genuine and natural to human beings, it's not going to go away. And so what we need to do is discover what is it that gets in the way of a very natural, progressive, uh, evolving and expanding uh, uh, sense of life that this desire would lead to. What was it? What is it that would get in the way of it? And become really curious about it. And that's what I'm going to be doing in the class. If you want to jump in on it, it's cheap. gpwalsh.com/deep dive. And what you'll find is that while every desire arises out of every desire is innocent. There's no such thing as a bad desire, an immoral desire. Um, Desires are all very natural and innocent, just like in children. Look at a child; they don't have any unnatural desires, and they also are not inhibited about it. They know exactly what they want; they reach for it. But of course, they reach for some things we don't like it. They get their hand slapped, and they begin to start editing their own desires. They start constricting them. They start making them smaller, and that's what we've done. The pure, powerful energy of a desire arises, and it runs into your conditioning. It is the conditioning that is restricting it, or trying to usurp it, turn it to a different purposes, turn it into something selfish when all desires are inherently unselfish, um, and basically turn it into something that it's not, which diffuses the energy, it robs the energy of it, and that's why a lot of times some of the desires we actually achieve aren't very satisfying, but that's only because it's just been squeezed out of shape. It's no longer it's in its pure form. So coming to terms with that conditioning to set the desires free. The spiritual awakening doesn't just set you free from the belief in the self, false self. It sets all of the aspects of life free. It sets free desire because now it's pure. It sets free love. It sets free pleasure and play. It sets all of that free because it's no longer under the yoke of these egoic needs, which is nothing other than than conditioned responses. So what really happens is you line up the energy of your own beliefs and assumptions to the point where they are congruent with the desire. They are as pure and as open and as beautiful as the desire is. And that's when manifestation takes place. You simply cannot realize a desire that runs contrary to your prevalent beliefs. So we have to question our assumptions. We have to look at kind of the energetic patterns that we're living as real. And you'll find that that they're not really in line. That you'll eventually find that every desire is absolutely pure and innocent, and that our conditioning has just limited it and said, well, that's not a good thing. You can't do that one. We shouldn't be like that. Don't want too much. Oh, that's sinful. That's not good or moral. And these are all artificial judgments that have been laid on top of it. That is the only thing that hinders the fulfillment of desire. Because the desire comes with the fulfillment built into it. It doesn't come up. Our belief system is the desire arises. I've now got it. It's like heaven says, here's this great desire, and you'll be really happy if it's fulfilled. You're on your own, kid. Make it happen. And now you've got all these limited, you're trying to figure out how to get it fulfilled, to get wrapped around the axle. The entire process is miserable. So you get this miserable process hoping to have a happy ending, right? Well, you can't make a happy ending out of a miserable life. You can't do it. You got to start with happy, so you can end with happy, and so that really is what it comes down to. Is like beginning the process of letting yourself live in harmony with your own desires, and eventually you find out that what you're really doing is harmonizing with who you really are, because those desires are a direct reflection of the real you when they're seen in their actual in their actual purity. So I hope that answers your question.
You gotta follow up that you're really gonna like, because it gets very subtle here. Well, first, actually, the person who asked that said, if you ask what is getting in the way, aren't you creating reasons for the desire not to happen? No. I mean, if it's not happening, it's not happening. You can't argue that, right? So you're not creating something by exploring what's there.
Right.
You know, if I can't get through a door, I can't get through it. I can't say, well, isn't asking what's stopping me creating a problem? It's just, if it's not happening, if you're honestly looking at what's going on, you're not creating anything. You're just asking to see what's already there. So remember with, sometimes with getting a little bit overboard with the idea of any thought you think makes something happen. The idea that if I'm just genuinely looking at what's here and something unpleasant comes up, I've now created that and have to somehow undo that. It's not really like that. You're just examining what's prohibiting movement in a certain direction, and you'll find it's never really negative.
Yeah.
It's not just doing it to mess with you or to.
And this use of mind is the right use of mind, to inquire honestly into what's going on, so that you can find out. Because if you just looking at your feelings, the desire is there. There's a resistance to the desire, which is a result of conditioning. Now, the desire, all the conditioning it's attempted to do is to try to get rid of the desire, right? I mean, because you only have two choices. Either the desire fulfills itself or it goes away, because otherwise you suffer, right? Hell is unrequited desire, a desire that never gets fulfilled. So either you got to make it go away, which is the way we try to do it. We try to make it smaller, right? So maybe I can fulfill something smaller. Doesn't work. We try to make it go away. Doesn't work. Of course you can't. I mean, it's like trying to make your hair stop growing, right? It's natural to you. So the only solution is to reconcile between what's resisting and what the desire is. And so to examine the resistance to see what's made of isn't creating anything. It's exploring what's there, so it comes out of the darkness of being unconscious, becomes consciously present, and now you're free to actually become liberated from that resistance. And you see that you don't need to resist the desire, and that the resistance was simply caused by traumas and stuff in the past and training that we got that made us deny our own feelings, our own ambitions, and our own aspirations. And we eventually come to a way in which we can honor our desires and aspirations and still maintain the energies system to be safe and sound and moral and intelligent and compassionate and all that. That's why I call it inner reconciliation, or reconciling these two very powerful energies so that they harmonize, and that's really when manifestation takes place.
Okay, so here's a very subtle question that you're going to like. So is desire the main block that we have objectified it? And only when we come to the point of internalization, when we see it's not something out there, but right here, and I am my own biggest enemy. So desire, looking for something, the searching as if it can be found someplace else.
That's it. You've hit the nail on the head. The desire is always internal. It always has within it the energy of fulfillment. And our mistake is thinking that what we're seeking is something out there. As if the thing out there possessed the quality that the desire is desiring. We're always desiring an experience of happiness. That's it. We are always seeking. The desire is always for the feeling. And I say happiness, and it sounds very general, but happiness is infinitely varied. There's all sorts of different ways of feeling happy, right? All sorts of different experiences that amplify and express our happiness. So it doesn't mean that that it's this state where I sit around all day chanting Om and I'm happy. What it means is that the object that we pursue doesn't actually possess the happiness we're seeking. When we think it does, we get on the eternal search. We have objectified and projected that which is actually within us, the desire to feel more of who we are. That's what the desire is for. We've taken that, we've placed it on something external, and now we are, it's the donkey and the carrot, right? It doesn't matter how fast you run, you're never going to get to it. It's always going to be arm's length away. And you can tell that that's happening because you feel bad, you suffer, right? Because you've projected it out of yourself. The fulfillment of every desire is already within you, right? That doesn't mean the desire is illegitimate. What it means is that it's a calling to discover more of who you are. It's an invitation for your universe to expand even more, to experience more of the bliss of being. And it all originates from the outside, inside, and then expresses itself outside. So at first it comes up, we have a desire, and our minds and our training naturally projected upon an object. And that's okay, because sometimes the object is part of the deal. I mean, Evan loves to play bass. He'd have a hard time playing if he didn't have a bass. So there is an object involved in it that eventually has to complete the whole manifestation. But the key is not that we're going to just sit here and just feel happy and we're not going to have anything. The key is knowing what the substance of the thing is. That the substance of happiness isn't in the thing. The substance of happiness is here and then manifests itself in the thing. This is how thoughts become things, which is a phrase that came popular with The Secret. The thing is made of this energy of the attributes and qualities of being. It's not made up of particles. It's made up of life. It's made up of heart. It's made up of the energy of being. It really does turn it around. So your question is well asked and well formed. When every desire is for an expanded experience of yourself, that's ultimately what it is, and that must manifest itself in your experience as actual events and concrete stuff. That's the law. That's the way it works, because the outside is always a reflection of the inside. The only mistake we make is that instead of seeking the expression of our happiness and our joy and everything outside, we're seeking to get it from the outside, which means we start from the premise that we don't have it. Starting from that premise, all you're ever going to do is run into more experiences where you don't have it, because that's the leading energy. That's what gets manifested. I hope that's clear and kind of brings the whole thing home. And again, I'm going to be talking about this stuff in 2 days, and I'm actually going to plan on doing a bigger one too, a more involved one. So, did that answer your question?
Well, yeah, they seem to seem to be happy, and they were sort of echoing similar things. Happiness is not found in the object; it's projected to the object. And I forget I put it there. Yes,
That's
happiness is
right.
the essence of our nature. Yes, it is.
Yeah, that's right.
The only funny thing that sometimes happens is I was working with someone around something the other day, and it's very possible to create a new position around this that doesn't serve you, which is okay. So everything if happiness is within me, I'm not supposed to want anything. And then, I mean, imagine that being the case, and you're now suspicious of everything you want and start mentally labeling, well, I shouldn't want that. I mean, just like my body's a little thirsty, and I
Yeah.
go and drink some water, and I grab it and I drink it. There's no conflict there. There's nothing in me that goes, well, imagine having that sensation and go, wait a minute, isn't the feeling of thirst and quench all within? Which is true, you know, but to then kind of torture yourself over this mental idea about, well, it does, so the water doesn't contain the happiness or anything like that, so therefore I can't want it. No, you just pick it up and you do it. It's just natural. So the desiring itself actually is no problem.
Right.
Desire doesn't create any suffering when there's no big deal around it.
Yeah.
When you just don't assume that happiness is dependent on that happening, but seeing it, as GP was saying, as just a sort of a natural process that happens, then, I mean, you do that with small desires constantly.
Yes.
Even just the desire to live, you're still breathing, right?
Yeah.
You know, so these things are always happening, and then the moment you start taking this on as an idea and judging any desire that comes up, well, I don't really, or when you use it as a cop out to stop moving towards something you actually want,
Yes.
which I see, where you have a strong desire for something. Maybe it's to get good at something that might take a minute, like learning an instrument or getting in shape or something. You have a genuine desire for it, and the resistance in you latches onto this idea. Well, it's not going to make me happy anyway, because happiness is all within, right? And it's actually latching onto that idea as sort of a fake avoidance mechanism.
And it's not true. Happiness isn't all within. Happiness starts within,
Mhm.
and then expresses itself outwardly. It's just understanding the flow of the energy until eventually you see that there's a continuum, and you can't have one without the other. You just need to make sure that you see that the energy is flowing in the right direction. It's always flowing outward from you, not inward to you. And once you see that, then you realize that the desire is fulfilling itself. The energy of fulfillment is actually in the desire, and it's not like you got it and now you got to make it happen. It's actually in the desire itself. The desire itself is actually the first manifestation of something that exists that is imperceivable to us in total. And I know it's kind of an out there thing. I'll talk about that in the class. But there's a whole other dimension of being that's going on before we even feel a desire for the thing. It's pretty cool.
Well, even on a practical level, though, I mean, you have an impulse to, if you hear a song in your head first, and then you write it.
Yep.
Like you could say it exists before it.
Yes,
Before
it does actually exist.
It comes from somewhere. You start to hear it. You start to write it down. So nobody else sees it until it's written down, but it like already quote unquote exists.
Yeah.
What's the difference between seeking the expression of happiness and going after the expression of happiness? How do you express happiness in yourself versus getting lost and chasing it? You feel happy. That's the difference. Do you feel happy, or do you feel like you're chasing happiness? Right. The difference is it's not going to be hard.
Yeah.
Your mind is looking for like, okay, how do I distinguish? It's like saying, what's the difference between getting kicked in the stomach versus like taking a nice walk, right? You will not have a problem distinguishing between the two, when you're chasing happiness versus expressing happiness.
You get good at the way it feels. It doesn't feel good to chase happiness because you don't feel happy. And so, I mean, maybe you don't know exactly what to do to generate those feelings of happiness, right? Or to get back in touch with your happiness. But what you can certainly do is stop chasing it. You're clearly headed in the wrong direction because it doesn't feel good. It's not even close. So turn around, and at least just kind of drop the chase for a second and just be okay with where you are right now. Just put the car in neutral. Right? And it'll slow down, and you'll be able to turn around and start heading back in the direction you really want to go into. So yeah, we don't have to figure all these things out. If the direction you're going in doesn't feel good, stop going.
How do you express happiness? What actions do you use? What talk happens when happiness? Well, it's not the. It could be the same sentence, right? It's the energy behind it.
Yeah.
You know, don't worry so much about what you'll say. I mean, who knows, right? But it will certainly feel a lot different. I mean, you've met people who have tried to technique you into appearing likable or appearing happy, whether it's a salesperson or something like
Yeah.
that, you know, pretending to be, hey everybody, like how's it going? Welcome to the YouTube channel, and like anybody can kind of fake that, right? But so you could say, well, that looks like an expression of happiness, but somebody could be sitting on a bench with their eyes closed and just be in bliss, and that's
Yeah.
going to be going out. Like that's an expression of happiness. You could be playing a sad sounding song and it's actually still an expression of happiness because of where it's coming from and how it feels. I mean, happiness, it's like can be oversimplified.
Get to the substance. You won't have to worry about the expression.
Yeah.
It's really simple. If the joke's funny, you laugh, right? So just get to it. You will find ways of expressing it that will just amaze you. It'll be spontaneous. It'll surprise you when the words come out of your mouth. You and the person you're talking to, or the people that you're talking to, will all be hearing it at the same time. It's really quite lovely.
Oh, Cyrus asked, I can feel calm and peaceful, but not exuberance or an outward expression of happiness. What am I missing?
Nothing.
Nothing. I mean, you've seen me. How explosive do I come across? You know? I just don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, it isn't. Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more uh, explosive. I'm a lot more calm than I used to be. But remember the basic state. Neutral is peace, right? You get to the peace and forget about everything else. You got it, and then just let whatever arises from there arise. Don't let your mind say, "Well, shouldn't I be feeling bliss and exuberance and excitement right now?" That's just the mind that is never content with what it has. It always thinks there must be something else. There isn't. Just that presence. That's that peace, that quiet. That is the real happiness. The happiness in expression is emotional ups and that sort of thing. But they all come and go, right? The real happiness, the real ananda, the real bliss is just this peace of contentment. Everything is just okay. And it is neither up nor down. It is just still. And all the upness and downness can appear on it and doesn't disturb it. Like the waves on the ocean do not disturb the ocean.
All right. I think that's a good place to call it.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us and asking
Yeah,
your
thanks.
questions. It'll probably be a couple weeks before we do one of these, at least together. I'm going to be out of the country for, I don't know, until about May or so. So thanks again. As always, if you want to experience more of what this is all about, you can go to innerreconciliation.com, and there's some free exercises and stuff there, and some videos, and GP will kind of walk you through the process that he uses and that I use myself as well, obviously, as far as how we approach this whole subject. It's sort of the baseline of everything that we are talking about.
And the class on Wednesday.
Oh yeah, there's a class on just GP was talking about this.
GPWalsh.com/deep dive.
Yeah, those are always great, and it's fun to hang out with us there. So we will see you, if not there, we'll see you on the next video, and we will talk to you soon. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you all. Nice to meet some new... by the way, you look like a UK comedian, Jimmy Carr. I don't know him. I know a couple UK comedians, but I'm not sure if he's referring to you or me. So I'll look I'll look him up. It'll probably be obvious when we...
Yeah, it'll be obvious when we see him, because
Cool.
probably you.
All right. Thanks, everybody, and
See you all.
we'll see you next time.